For PHNX Diamondbacks, I'm Derek Montilla, and of course, this is Jesse Friedman. We're here today to talk a little bit about the pitch clock and how it's already impacted the game of baseball in spring training.
Yeah, Jason Stark tweeted that entering Friday, the average game time so far in spring training is 2 hours and 38 minutes.
I love it.
It's
pretty great.
I mean, we saw a 2 hour, 4 minute game for the Diamondbacks a few days ago, which was pretty crazy. Other than that, they've been closer to 3 hours,
Sure.
But I think as spring training goes on, we'll see the average be probably something around there as well. But yeah, that was 3 hours last year, spring training as of this time. So we're talking about a 22-minute difference at this point between last year and this year.
So how has the pitch clock impacted the game otherwise? Well, not too significantly, and that's something we expected after meeting with MLB officials. Morgan Sword from MLB actually provided us with a ton of information showing us that pretty much the biggest thing impacted by the pitch clock and these changes is the time of game. Outside of that, a lot of the offensive numbers and defensive numbers seem to be very similar.
Yeah, and just to put that kind of in perspective, 2 hours and 38 minutes is pretty short compared to the recent history of Major League Baseball. We take a look at this graphic on your screen here. The average game length going back to 1920.
This is wild.
This is pretty crazy. 1920, Derek, a baseball game on average took 1 hour and 47 minutes.
Inject it into my veins, Jesse.
That's a little excessive. I don't think I want to see baseball games an hour and 47 minutes at this point.
Sure,
we would be rushing like crazy at that point. But if you look at this graph, you see that you have to go back to about the 1980s in order to get back to when Major League Baseball games were around 2 hours and 38 minutes, as we've seen so far in spring training. So we're basically going back 40 years to how long baseball games took at that point.
The wildest thing for me is the game that we saw the other day from the Arizona Diamondbacks that was 2 hours and 4 minutes for its time of game.
It's pretty crazy. Derek was so happy.
Oh, I loved it so much. And I mean, you have to go back to 1940 to find an average game time that short. We will both say like that game seemed very quick. And even Torey Lovullo after the game said that it felt like it was a very fast pace as far as the baseball game goes. But
he said that I asked if he's ever been a part of a game that was that slow or that fast. And he said no. He said to his knowledge, he has never managed a baseball game that went by that quickly.
This is my 12th season covering the Arizona Diamondbacks, Jesse, and I have never ever experienced a game anywhere close to that short. And that even goes for like some of the 7-inning games and things that we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
So the big thing here is that with the disengagements rule and the pitch clock, we thought we would see an increase in steals, and we have seen that, just not as significantly as we expected to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been somewhat significant. If you look at this chart here on your screen, this was as of the first weekend of spring training games. So this goes back a few days. This data isn't perfectly up to date, although I think things have continued somewhat along these lines. We're at 1.09 stolen base attempts per game under the pitch clock so far in spring training. That is up pretty significantly from 0.77 last year. But if you look at this table that you see here over the last 14 years, 1.09 is not necessarily unheard of. Back in 2012, we had 1.11 stolen base attempts per game in spring training. And it's also important to note that in the regular season, generally stolen base attempts do fall off. Teams steal bases more in spring training than they do in the regular season. And you see that on the table here as well, that generally a difference of anywhere from about 15% up to 30% fewer steals in the regular season than in spring training.
So far, what we've seen is hijinks and shenanigans when it comes to the pitch clock, and pitchers, base runners, everybody in baseball trying to find some sort of competitive advantage when it comes to this situation. So far, it's only, in my opinion, made baseball more fun and interesting. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it has reduced the average time of game by 20 minutes. I do not have a problem with the pitch clock as far as I'm concerned. All hail my new time lord, the pitch clock.
There you go. Yeah. I think, and as far as stolen bases are concerned, even though that number is going to go down in the regular season, almost for sure, we're still probably going to see more stolen base attempts in the regular season than we have in years past, which I think is a big benefit. The other thing, Derek, is there haven't been that many pitch clock violations at this point.
Yeah.
We're at 1.63 per game entering play on Friday. which is not that bad. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, 1.63 for an entire game. You're talking about a little bit less than one for each team on average. It's really not that intrusive as far as the game goes. And that number is also very comparable to the numbers that they had in the minor leagues when the pitch clock was first tested down there. They were at 1.73 in the first week after implementing the pitch clock. So major league players appear to have adapted maybe even a little bit better than minor league players did.
Well, and we had 2 pitch clock violations in one at bat before a single pitch was thrown in an Arizona Diamondbacks game. So it just goes to show that outside of that one incident, I don't believe that game had very many other pitch clock violations. And I mean, I know that's one concern that a lot of people that are anti-pitch clock have. So far, doesn't seem to be slowing the game down in any way. And it definitely doesn't seem to impede it, where aside from a couple of outliers, the game's results haven't really been impacted by the pitch clock. We will see that happen, though, during the season. We're going to see the pitch clock inevitably impact a game, impact an outcome. It's not a perfect system, and there's no way for the rules to be upheld without it also impacting potentially a 9th inning at bat. That's a critical at bat for one of the 2 teams, right? So we're going to see this continue in baseball, and I know that there are a lot of people that are still skeptics of it, but so far from what we've seen in spring training, it appears that Major League Baseball is following along the same lines as minor league baseball. And one very positive aspect about that is that it took about 30 days for minor league baseball for the majority of minor league baseball to acclimate to all of these new rules. So hopefully we will see a similar progression with Major League Baseball. And before we hit the regular season, all of these players and clubs will be used to playing and abiding by these rules.
Yeah, and in the minor leagues, what baseball found is that once you get into it a few months, there were under 0.5 pitch clock violations per game. And I imagine in Major League Baseball, we're probably going to get there. So, if we get to a point where you're seeing a pitch clock violation once every 2 or 3 games on average, I don't think anyone really feels that that's all that intrusive at that point, right? The violation is literally just a free ball or a free strike. So it's not like an automatic run is scored or something like that. So at the end of the day, I don't think those violations are going to have much of an impact at all.
You can follow us both on Twitter. I'm at Cap_Kman with a K. He's at Jesse N. Friedman. Our show is at PHNX_D-backs. For more on the Arizona Diamondbacks, keep it locked right here to PHNX.